I really want to do game design as a career because I really enjoy playing games, right? But I didn't quite know truly what it was that I wanted to do. And my dad's like, you got to see in this class. Like, how are you going to do this for a living?
ADHD Rewired, episode 391. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter, you can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Henry Holman. Henry is going to be a senior at DePaul University. He is studying computer science and is working towards a career in game programming. Although he was diagnosed at 9 years old, he didn't start learning about ADHD until he was 19 years old and remains fascinated with the why behind his ADHD-ness. He has a love for video games, or he has loved video games for as long as he can remember, and in recent years, he has learned a lot about himself as he strives to improve at competitive Super Smash Brothers. His long-term career goal is to create a game that makes players feel like they have ADHD to increase awareness and understanding surrounding the disorder. Henry, welcome to the podcast and welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's always exciting to actually have someone here in person.
Yeah.
You live in the next town over.
Yeah.
And just kind of realized that you were actually one of my son's camp counselors.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
It is a small world.
It really is. Yeah.
All right. So welcome. All right, so you are you're doing game design. You know, so many kids that will say, "I just want to play video games." And,
yeah, right.
And it's amazing how that can actually be a thing now. It's when we first started hearing kids say that, they're like, "Okay, like people don't make money playing video." Right. Oh no, that people are actually making bank playing video games if they're good. So, how did you get into video games?
The very, very beginning was. I don't remember what came first because I was very young. I got a hand-me-down Game Boy Color from a family friend.
Okay.
And it had 4 games on it. There was a Kirby game. There was Kirby's Dream Land. There was Tetris. There was this game called Wario Land. And then there was a Tom and Jerry game. And I would play the hell out of all 4 of those games. And then the other one that I remember was there was a McDonald's toy for some Sonic the Hedgehog game. And it had one of the characters like playing hockey against a robot. And so you just like move them back and forth between 3 positions and try to shoot around the robots. So those were the 2 that really got me started. And I got a DS Lite when I was younger. I bought one with my own money because my parents were not going to buy that kind of stuff for me. They wanted me to learn about saving and spending money. And then eventually I have 2 other siblings. And so eventually the 3 of us split a Wii when I was 9.
Okay.
So that was really how it started. And I don't know.
What was your favorite Wii game?
Super Mario Galaxy. Still to this day.
Okay. I had it's funny. My son was always frustrated by the Wii because the controller was so sensitive, and you know, if you had some fine motor skill challenges, that is tough. But I tell you, Wii Sports Resort.
Oh, I love that game.
Ping pong.
Yeah,
I beat Lucy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Did you really?
I did.
That's awesome.
That was when I realized I'm like, I cannot own video games because that was like just one more up until like 3 a.m.
Oh yeah. Everyone's had those moments.
Yes, it's actually where I came up with the strategy of plugging my Wii into a lamp timer.
There you go. Yeah.
So it's like you're predetermined.
Yeah.
So it's like, because once it shuts off, like you don't want to actually restart it. You're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you want to create a game that helps players feel like they have ADHD.
Yeah.
Who do you like? Who would that target?
It would target like general audiences. There's a game there's actually two games that kind of sparked this idea for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was back in winter of 2020, right before the pandemic started. I was taking a game design for non-majors class. And for the final project, we had to do a research paper. We had to play a game and do like one of a number of different things with it. And so I decided to do like a historical analysis, and I was looking for a game to play. And I picked a game and I was playing it, and I realized this game is way too long for me to finish in time for me to start writing this paper. So I picked my brother's brain because he's also big into games, and he recommended to me this game called Celeste. It's a platforming game. It's an indie game. It's developed by like 2 or 3 guys. And the story is about a girl named Madeline who wants to climb Celeste Mountain. The underlying theme of the game is that her climbing the mountain is kind of a metaphor for her overcoming her anxiety. And that really resonated with me, even though at the time I didn't really recognize that I kind of felt like I was having like anxious tendencies. I was definitely, by then I was very deep into like researching ADHD and stuff. And so there were definitely certain moments for her in the story that very much resonated with me. And there was actually a moment towards the middle of the game that actually made me cry, like brought me to tears. And then there's another game that I hadn't played at the time. I actually hadn't played it until recently. It's called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And the story behind that game is really fascinating because their mission in making that game was they wanted to, the character suffers from psychosis, the main character that you play as.
Okay.
And they consulted like psychiatrists, I believe it's at University of Cambridge, to get it like medically like accurate. They didn't want to like
do it a disservice.
Yeah, they didn't want to do a disservice. And there's actually a whole like presentation that they made about it, where they wanted to break a sort of misrepresentation of mental health in games.
That's great.
And it was fascinating to me that they went so far as to like work side by side with psychiatrists to make sure that the game design was in line with what is medically accurate about having psychosis. There's a 22-minute video that they have about it where the lead like psychiatrist that they consulted was talking about it, and like the last whole 3 minutes of it is like quotes from players who sent in letters to the studio, basically saying like various things along the lines of like, my family like hated me, like they like I was considered dead to them, and then I played this game with my brother, or I played this game with my parents, or I had my family play this game, and all of a sudden like it's like my family loves me again.
Wow.
It was really powerful, brought me to tears. It was so fascinating.
And what game was this?
The game is called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
So the idea that you have for your game, would this be part of the understory? So, because I'm trying to think about like from a marketing standpoint, right. The people who need this most, this information, are they going to actually go seek? They're looking for games.
Yeah.
I want to find a game that's going to teach you more about ADHD. Like,
right.
Probably not. Right.
Oh, so that's why I brought up Hellblade, because that game is just a game that's made for general audiences.
Okay.
But it also happens to be a game that was designed to give a medically accurate picture of what it's like to have psychosis.
Okay.
As a side thing. So you could play that game not knowing that was a thing, and you would play it and you'd have a great time even if you didn't know that.
Cool. All right.
So that's kind of what I'm going for with that kind of a game.
So where are you with this?
The most that I've done so far, I don't know if you've heard of Mario Maker.
My son loves Mario Maker.
So on Mario Maker 2 on my Switch, I actually made some prototype levels of just, for instance, what a game would be designed like if it was designed like that. And I designed it after Russell Barkley's theory of executive functions. There's actually a specific set of videos that's linked on the r/ADHD subreddit that was like, it was a 3-hour presentation by Russell Barkley split up into like 5, 10, 15-minute segments. And there's a specific video where he says, all right, this is in order the 5 executive deficits that appear as you grow up if you have ADHD.
Like the phenotype model, or?
Well, it's like the first executive deficit to appear is like, you can't stop yourself. And then the second executive deficit to appear is the mind's eye. You don't have hindsight foresight. And then I don't remember specifically what the model is called, but there's like 5 steps in like when the deficits pop up.
You didn't know there was going to be a quiz on Barkley's stuff.
Yeah,
right?
No, I had no idea. But yeah, so I designed it after like the World 1-1, like the level 1-1 from the original Super Mario Brothers, because that's like the most well-known level, right? So I figure you start with an audience that knows that level pretty well.
Okay.
So I recreated that level perfectly. So that was like level 0. And then level 1 is like the first executive deficit to appear is you can't stop yourself. So the level scrolls by itself, right? And then the second
the auto scroll. It's so funny.
An auto scroller. Yeah.
Goes, oh man, auto scroll.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then the second executive deficit to appear is lack of hindsight or foresight. I might be mixing up the order, but for that one, I had it be like a dark level. So you can only see like, it's only lit like around your character.
Okay.
Right? So you can't see behind you, you can't see in front of you, and the level's auto scrolling. And so I had the difficulty compound up to level 5.
Okay, so you're using Mario Maker as a sort of a platform.
Yeah.
What do you like? Are they like public? 'Cause I know you can like share levels. Like what are you naming the levels?
I think I'm just naming them like level 0, no executive deficits. Level 1, lack of hindsight and foresight. Or level 1, deficit 1, the mind's eye.
Okay.
Deficit 2, the mind's voice. You can't tell yourself what to do. Stuff like that.
Okay, no, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like the work that you're doing in school, so you love video games.
Yes.
But you're also doing like you're studying to do this professionally. And there's absolutely a difference between being someone who's enthusiastic about a thing and being a professional.
Yeah.
Around
right.
that domain.
Exactly.
With having ADHD, how would you describe that sort of process for you? Like, do you find it hard to actually do the coursework, or do you kind of love it all, or what? How would you describe that?
Well, something that a phrase I recently picked up from listening to this podcast is we don't have the luxury with ADHD. We don't have the luxury of doing things that we don't like to do for a living, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like looking back how I would characterize really my entire journey through school, because like K through 12, you don't really have a whole lot of decision in what kind of coursework you have. I mean, in middle school, they gave us like 1 elective or 2 electives. And then in high schoal, they like by the end, we were choosing in 12th grade, we were choosing basically every class except we had to take English and we had to take PE. But like, I always struggled to like do my homework and or hand in the homework. And my parents are listening and they just had flashbacks for me saying that, because that was a huge struggle for me all through high school. And when I was a junior in high school, they brought back the game design class.
Okay.
And it was an okay class. It was, most of it was just like a teacher in the room, and we would go online and we would find like tutorials from this website that already existed and then submit them as graded projects. Right.
Okay.
And I got a C in that class. And for a while up to that point, I had been saying like, I really want to do game design as a career, because I really enjoy playing games. Right. But I didn't quite know, what it was that I wanted to do. And my dad's like, you got to see in this class. Like, how are you going to do this for a living? I'm like, I don't know. And I don't even remember why I got a C. I like missed one of the projects, but he gave me like 50% on it or something like that.
Sure.
And then the following year, they brought back the AP Computer Science course, which is where I first learned to program. And I realized, wow, I like love programming.
Okay.
Yeah. Because my brain is a problem solver. I always used to play with Legos, but the building toy that I loved was Kinects. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah. I still play with Kinects to this day. Like, I still use them for like creating like prosthetic things. Like I don't have like a microphone properly set up at my desk at home. So I have like the High School Musical microphone from like the Wii like singing game.
Okay.
Propped up by like a little thing made out of Kinects. So I'm a problem solver, right?
Okay.
And Kinects is how I solve problems up to that point. And then I was like, programming is literally just problem solving. It's all problem solving. It's thinking about a problem, breaking it down into pieces, and then using code to solve the problem. From there, I was like, duh, I'm going to major in computer science. How could I not? And I spent my first year at Oakton Community College, which I'm actually kind of thankful for, because it allowed me to be able to go to DePaul, where their computer science degree actually has 2 different curriculums. There's a software development curriculum and there's a game systems curriculum, which is essentially like computer science but hard, taught through game programming.
How many of your cohorts they go to these classes because they just like play video games and don't actually make it through the program?
I've met a couple of people in my classes that are like, dude, I'm just here to play games. I'm like, this is like hard version of computer science. You can't just be like, I just want to play games and get through it, you know?
And you're still doing all the work that's involved. You're still enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm still enjoying it. It's definitely very difficult. I hit the hardest, like the weed out course in my major, was this one programming course. I actually had to retake it, because it was so hard, but it was my favorite class. My professor was so cool. He was so smart. He was an electrical engineer in college. And I believe he said he's credited on, Mortal Kombat 2 through 6 or 2 through 7 or something like that.
Cool.
So
he's got some street cred.
Yeah, right. You're right. Really smart guy, and he's had actually experience in the game industry. But retaking that class was a pleasure. I loved that class. Wow, I totally realized I totally forgot what the question was.
That's a great point for us to take a quick break.
Yeah.
So we will do that. We'll be right back. I know that when we first talked a while ago, we talked about possibly doing some coaching around maybe creating a system. So I wanted to just ask you a couple other questions, sort of about how gaming led to helping you develop some more skills. And then, but we'll first take a quick break and we'll be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our coaching community. As of this episode's release, we're only 2 days away from our last scheduled registration event for our fall coaching and accountability groups. Our final registration event is happening this Thursday, September 2nd, from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time. That's noon to 2 Pacific, 3 to 5 Eastern. Registration is by invitation only, so if you want to join the fall season of the ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability groups, don't wait. Head on over now to coachingrewired.com and click on that orange button for fall coaching to get instructions sent to your email to sign up for our final registration event. And if you've already signed up but you haven't received your email yet, double and triple check your spam folder to make sure you haven't missed any updates from us. This is your chance to join a community of adults with ADHD just like you who want to get unstuck and learn ADHD-friendly ways to gain momentum on their biggest goals. And most of all, find like-minded people where they can all belong. If you're new to ADHD Rewired and are wondering what these coaching groups are all about, then I'm glad you're tuning in here. Here are just a few stories that listeners like you shared with us after being a part of our coaching groups.
Whether it was the masterminds or like the main group sessions, it just brought me into like, wow, there's power in community. And just in the next stages of my life that I'm going through, it's a really important lesson for me to know. It just helped also to know that like I have other things in my arsenal, that I have other people that I can tap into and structures and resources and ideas. And it's just kind of shifted my mindset. I'm a believer in community and the power of community. Some of the most significant moments of Rewired have been coming out of this pandemic, and also just personally what I was going through the past couple years. I felt like I was a little bit more isolated. I think I told myself that I have like the answers are coming from me, and I was just constantly like in my head thinking about different solutions. And it like showed me, step by step, week by week, day by day, like why is it important to be in connection with people? I really think I'd forgotten that and had made it seem like, oh, this is stressful, dealing with all different types of people. And there was nothing stressful about being in community with everybody. Like it was all a positive addition.
I joined group because I really felt like I'd plateaued. I had been given all of these tools by coaches over the years, and I felt like I had my nose pressed up against the glass, watching everybody else be able to make them work. Well, I had them in my hands and they just slipped through my fingers. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make a to-do list do a thing for me. I couldn't put things on. I feel like if I'd had this group 20 years ago, I can't imagine how much better my life could be now. But I'm really excited to continue to work this process going forward.
I came into this course with high expectations of what I was going to learn about ADHD. What I've learned and what I've taken forward with me has greatly exceeded my expectations.
My biggest takeaways are that social groups and regularity really help me, and routines can really help me.
Yeah, so for anyone who's thinking about joining this group but is uncertain about it, I'll just throw out a reminder I have to give myself very often, and that is connection and support are everything. I mean, you can read books, weeks. Of course, you can go to your doctor, your therapist, and have your professional help, and that's great. But there's nothing like having a group of people where it's safe to talk about your struggles, to share the things that are hardest, to not be judged for those things, and to actually be embraced and helped for that. And it certainly is an investment to join the group. But, ADHD, there are a number of ways that it can very easily rob you of a lot of time, whether that's in your day or in the weeks or months trying to do things that are most important to you in your life, and you find it hard to show up and be consistent, and it derails you. And sometimes that happens. That's going to be okay. But when you do have the connection and support, it's going to happen less. What you get back by investing in a group like this is the fact that it's going to inevitably save you time and get you towards things that you want more faster. Life's short. Life's precious. Time is short. Time is precious. And in the end, relationships and connections are everything. And that's what you're investing in.
If this sounds like what you need to get moving on the things that are most important to you, join us for our 26th season of our award-winning online ADHD rewired coaching and accountability groups. Take your first step now by going to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our fall interest list. Registration is by invitation only. Our final registration event is this week on September 2nd, starting at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Please don't wait until the night before, because we ask that every member complete a 3-step application process before you get your actual invite to the registration event. If you've already submitted your name to our fall interest list, then keep checking your email inbox for those instructions so you can join us on Thursday, September 2nd. As of this recording, our 6 a.m. Pacific time session with Coach Moira Mabin has just 1 spot left. My 10 a.m. Pacific time session has only 3 spots left. Coach Roxy Martin's 9 a.m. Pacific time session and my 12:30 p.m. Pacific time session still have room, but these spots won't last. If you have been trying to manage your ADHD, but you're still feeling stuck and you're itching to finally gain some forward momentum on your most important goals by trying something different, then head on over to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. We really hope you'll join us. We can't wait to meet you. All right, and we are back. All right, so I was looking at my notes from our first conversation, and you said that you started educating yourself after getting stuck on sort of breaking the skill ceiling.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
So I'll give you the short version of the backstory because it's only a little bit relevant. The first time I ever played Super Smash Brothers, I was 8. This was before I got my own Wii. So the first time that I played Super Smash Brothers, I was 7 or 8. I was before I got my own Wii. I was playing Super Smash Brothers Brawl, and I was having an effing blast. It was so fun. I got to play with my other friends in like first grade, and that was really where it started. And then there was Super Smash Brothers for the Wii U and for the 3DS. So my friends and I, in high school, we would all bring our Nintendo 3DSs to school, and we would play Super Smash Brothers together during lunch. It was just a game that, like, when I first started getting into like more like hardcore games, that was the one that had always been there with me. And then in 2018, Super Smash Brothers Ultimate came out for the Nintendo Switch, and I was like, all right, because I had been trying like a little bit during the previous game to like get into like competitive Super Smash Brothers, because I realized how much I really love playing this game. And so Super Smash Brothers Ultimate came out for the Switch, and I was like, all right, this is the one where I'm really going to dive in and start playing this game competitively. I want to learn how to play this competitively. And when I was in middle school, my mom was sharing with me a couple of things about ADHD. Specifically, I remember her sending me a link to ADDitude.com. And at the time I was like, I didn't really know much about it. So I was like, because you don't know much about ADHD. You don't really know how it impairs you, I guess. And so I was like, ADHD is not really that big of a problem for me. Spoiler alert. It was like my biggest issue in school. So I kind of brushed it aside up until the game came out in December of 18, and I decided the character that I wanted to play as competitively. They call that your main.
Okay.
It's the one that because there's like,
who's your main?
I play Ken from Street Fighter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have 2, by the way.
You do? Who do you play?
Rob
Okay.
and Sonic.
Oh, wow. All right. I used to play Sonic in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. That was one of my first characters. Yeah.
His spin like punch move. It's a tough one to defend against.
Yeah, it really is.
Sorry for all the people who are like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah, right. I started learning how to play Ken, and I very quickly realized he's one of the most difficult characters to learn in Super Smash Brothers, because like Super Smash Brothers is meant to appeal to casual players, so it's easy to start and really hard to learn. But Ken is like harder to start because he carries over some of like the more complicated like inputs from Street Fighter. And I won't get too deep into it, but there's like, you move the joystick in a certain way, and then you press a button at the end of that joystick move, and it does like a more powerful version of an attack that you can do in an easier way. And the other interesting thing about Ken, and this is relevant, I promise, there's like 70 something, I think at this point there's like 80 something characters in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And certain characters are just worse against other characters. And this is, like, for example, like if you're playing Donkey Kong, you are just, by the nature of the moves that Donkey Kong has, you are just at a disadvantage if you play against Mario, or if you play against Zelda, or if you play against Link, right? Like, no matter how you play, you will always be fighting an uphill battle if you're playing against certain characters based on the moves that your character has. The interesting thing about Ken and Ryu is the other Street Fighter character that's in the game. They don't really follow the rule of matchups. They don't really have predetermined like good or bad matchups.
Okay.
They kind of do, but the way that their movesets work is like, it's very dependent on the player to be able to recognize the habits of their opponent and kind of deal with it, you know, and fight according to how their opponent plays. Which is kind of coincidentally perfect for me, because picking up Ken in Super Smash Brothers, it was kind of a perfect metaphor for living life with ADHD. Because living life with ADHD, you kind of have to like learn how the real world works, and you have to learn how your brain works, and you have to learn how to play against your opponent. And it's not, the world isn't designed intentionally this way, but like the world is just designed with not ADHD people in mind.
Right.
And ADHD just happens to be a disorder that causes you to fall prey to a lot of the trappings of like the regular world. As you get older, people just expect you to be able to manage your time and manage your priorities. And that was something I always struggled with. And manage your motivation, and like a lot of self-motivation is required as you get into late high school and definitely in college. And so something I really quickly learned was, they call it autopilot. It's the equivalent of playing, it's the equivalent of, if you're in a fist fight, it's the equivalent of screaming and flailing your arms and running at your opponent. It's not really effective. It's better than doing nothing, but it's not really effective. And so around the summer of 19, I realized I had hit a skill ceiling, because I was just kind of playing with the mindset that I had been playing with for 10 years of like, I'm just going to throw out attacks and I'm just going to do whatever. And I really quickly hit a skill ceiling, and I went to my first 2 tournaments. They were like local tournaments, like right on the outskirts of Chicago. And I got really, really frustrated because I would do like decently well against my friends, but my opponents in tournament were wiping the floor with me. I got so frustrated. And you do a set
like frustrated to the point where they have to call the police frustrated, or frustrated
no.
to the point of like, you got to figure out another strategy.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, 100%. Literally, those were the words in my mind after coming out of losing my second set. It's best 2 or 3 is a set.
Yeah.
So I didn't make it past my first set either time. I lost 0-2 in both my first sets, and I was like, I need to come up with another strategy. This strategy is not working for me. And so I started learning about how to play Ken, and I realized, I know I have the tools at my disposal to become a better Ken player, but for some reason I'm not able to put these into play, these strategies and these combos and whatever into play. And it occurred to me in a flash of brilliance, it came to me, maybe my ADHD has something to do with this. and so that was when the ADDitude Mag comment becomes relevant, because that was the first place that I went, because that was all that I had to go on. I went to ADDitudemag.com and I just started reading.
And were you taking medication at this point? Or?
Yeah, I had been medicated since I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And when I first started on medication, I was like, oh my God, this medication allows me to be who I really am. Like it was like really eye opening. It helped me, but like medication isn't as in a magic bullet. It enables you to.
It's not a panacea.
Right. For most people, it enables you to better employ strategies that you already like should know or should learn. Right. And so I went on ADDitude Mag, and I went down the rabbit hole. From there, I went to HowToADHD on YouTube. I watched Jessica's tear-jerking TED Talk. And I was like scouring through all of her videos, and I went to r/ADHD, and I actually remember a specific moment right after I started at DePaul. I was in math class, and it was like one of the first week or second week or something, and I couldn't focus, so I stood up and as I tend to do sometimes, I'll go to the bathroom, quote unquote, and I'll just take a walk to clear my head, right? And so it was shortly after I had subscribed to r/ADHD
on Reddit.
On Reddit, yeah. And I was scrolling through just some of like what was trending that day, and I just read like 2 or 3 posts, and I like sat down at a bench because my legs were starting to get shaky. I was like, oh my god, and I started reading these posts, and I'm like, oh my god, these people have lived like the exact same life as me. Like this whole time I had been like fighting with my parents about like homework, and like I really want to do well, but like there's something inside of me that like I want to do well, but it's not translating into like grades and whatever. And it brought me to tears. I was reading these posts on r/ADHD, and I was in tears. It was like, oh my god, people have been living the same life as me, and I've had this diagnosis for 10 years, and I'm only now discovering it, And so that was really when I started to learn about tournament nerves, staying calm under pressure, and like being able to like control impulses, because the way that you play Ken in Super Smash Brothers is you really have to hang back. And his only way, if you want to have any hope of winning the match, you need to know the habits of your opponent like that. And in a set where you're playing best 2 or 3, you may only get 2 matches to do that. You might get 3 if you get 1 win for the tiebreaker, right? So you have to pick up on the opponent's habits really, really quickly, and you have to learn how to adapt on the fly. And very quickly, I kind of learned, wow, this is a really great litmus test to check in on how I'm doing with like how I manage my habits, my ADHD coping strategies and habits and stuff. Because I think specifically the one that cracked it open for me was like, if I just learn to like slow down, take a deep breath in the moment where I'm at that crossroads, I can either go on Netflix and start watching some TV, or I can do the homework that I know is important, but I really, really, really don't want to do. If I just take a moment and stop and think, which is a lot harder than it sounds. For people with ADHD, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about, how hard it is to, in the moment, be like, this is a moment where I should stop and really think about this. That was really hard for me. And Super Smash Brothers was one of the things that helped me learn how to do that. Because as playing Ken, I can't just run in and start screaming and flailing my arms. I have to hang back, and I have to see how the other player is playing. And if they're hanging back too, you have to like egg them on. You have to get them to do something so they can start attacking, and so you can start to learn their habits. Granted, you're not learning necessarily the habits of the real world, but you're learning like the quirks of the real world and how it's different and what they expect of you, and how you can fill in the gaps of like what you need to do to like quote unquote make up for the gap in what you struggle with.
Sort of teaches that sort of mental flexibility of you have to show up, read the room, pivot, respond.
Yes. And so that was one of the first things. I learned it in Super Smash Brothers first, and then it sounds crazy. I learned in Super Smash Brothers first, and then I employed it in my real life. I learned strategies on how to stay calm and how to not instantly just automatically go into like ape brain and just start throwing out attacks. Take a deep breath. Always have water beside you, because there's the fight, flight, or freeze, right? Mm-hmm. And the way you avoid that reaction is by taking a drink of water, because your digestive system, both ends, the in and out, freeze when you're in fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. So if you take a drink of water, you can knock your body out of the fight, flight, or freeze reaction, and you can allow your brain the time to get out of that state, and you can pause and you can use your intellectual capability, and you can start thinking, right? Take a drink of water, or like take a bite of a granola bar or something to get the digestive system moving, because once the digestive system is moving, it'll break you out of the fight, flight, or freeze, and you can start thinking and like reading your opponent. And so that was kind of how I did it for myself. The parents of a kid that I used to babysit when I was in high school, as a graduation gift, they got me a Hydro Flask, right? And I was like, I have a water bottle, and I'm really picky about how cold my water is. I will not drink it if it's like lukewarm, or if it's not like chilled. And so I filled up my Hydro Flask, and I would keep it at my desk, right? And so I would take a drink of water at the moment when I needed to like choose between watching Netflix or doing the homework that's really important and due tomorrow, I'd take a drink of water, and I would shut down the fight, flight, or freeze, because my impulse would have been go to Netflix, right?
Yeah, that's great. So you sort of built in you recognize what your trigger was, your antecedent, and you replaced it with this very sort of quick and easy pause mechanism.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So clearly you are intensely passionate about games.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
And I think it really speaks to like if we are going to, problem solve around any area of life, if we can figure out a way to put it through the lens of what we are passionate about, it just, it gives our brain a fighting chance.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So as you've been sort of learning about your ADHD and how it both through games for sort of like competitive recreation as well as professional.
Yes.
Right. How you doing with the rest of your life?
Yeah.
So, because I know that often with ADHD, when we are interested in something and we are really driven, we keep it doing kind of great in this one domain.
Yeah.
But everything else is a shit show.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So what I want to do is, because I know that you were interested in having a little bit of a coaching conversation around sort of systems and keeping track of your to-dos. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll jump right into a little bit of coaching. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. We will be right back. If you happen to be listening to this episode right after last week's episode, I asked you to take a look at your to-do list, but only if it was safe to do so. If you can take a look right now, go ahead and do that. But if not, then please don't do this while you're driving or operating heavy machinery. Safety first. Anyways, take a look at your to-do list. Is there something on your list that you've been putting off for a really long time? What about those items that are still on your list that you've forgot that you've done already? And what about those other tasks you haven't added to your list because you'd just rather not think about them or do them at all? If this sounds like you are not alone. Trust me, I get it. I had those items too. Yes, even the ones I don't want to think about, which is why I tackle a lot of those dreaded and even boring tasks in Adult Study Hall, ADHD Rewired's a virtual co-working community. Join me and a bunch of other folks with ADHD in the ADHD-friendly co-working space built just for us. Access to Adult Study Hall is free for the first week and only $19.99 a month after that, with instant access to Adult Study Hall 24/7 or ASH 24/7, a dedicated Zoom room that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Members have shared Pomodoro timers, taken practice exams, worked on social media posts, cooked dinner, started a painting, written cover letters, recorded a podcast, and more. But if you want more structure and need an extra push to get started, your membership will also give you access to our ASH Plus sessions, which are themed and guided sessions for things like those dreaded tasks, for job searches, for writing, for cleaning. On Sundays, get your decluttering on with our clean and decluttering session. It's way more fun than having to tidy up alone. Then on Mondays at 4 p.m. Central, join the wonderful Barbara McDonough from ADHD Rewired, who hosts a Write With Me session to help overcome your writer's block. If you're missing or wanting a bit more movement in your routine, you can join at 10 a.m. Central on Tuesdays and Thursdays for a workout session. Also, every Thursday are our Task Buster sessions, where you can focus on one or two of your most dreaded tasks to finally cross them off your list. And don't forget about our cash sessions, which are our career accelerator sessions. This is a real gem in our community. If you are in the market looking for a job, it is worth it alone to be able to join Kat Hoyer, who is our HR expert and facilitator for those sessions. All of these things, including the ASH 24/7, are all part of your membership for only $19.99 a month. Did I mention it's free to try it the first week? Yeah, we have ADHD, and yes, to-do lists are hard. Well, they can be hard, but the great thing about this community is that we don't have to tackle our to-do lists alone. What are you waiting for? Join our community and come work with us by going to adultstudyhall.com. That's adultstudyhall.com. We can't wait to work with you. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons who support us at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. A special thank you this week to our new patrons: Quinn at the $10 a month level, Jason J at the $25 a month level, Felicity K at the $10 a month level, and Clyde P at the $10 a month level. Thank you so much for your support. Perks for our patrons start at just $5 a month, where you can get ad-free episodes of this show right in your favorite podcast player. If you haven't listened to the latest ad-free episodes, we are now all caught up. Then at $25 a month, you can join me for a group coaching call every fourth Tuesday of the month Our next patron-only group coaching call is on Tuesday, September 28th at 3 p.m. Central. That's 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And as of this recording, that's 4 weeks away. So if you're a patron giving at $25 a month, put this in your calendar because we'd love to have you join us. Many of our patrons give it simply because they want to support the work we are doing. Support starts at any amount, and I'm really so grateful for all the support you show over on Patreon. Your support does really help grow this community because we believe that no one needs to navigate their ADHD alone. Truly, all of your support is very much appreciated. Join our Patreon community with perks starting at just $5 a month for ad-free episodes. $25 a month gets you a seat at our monthly coaching call, and at $10 a month gets you the audio recording of those coaching calls. Support ADHD Rewired by becoming a patron today by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. All right, we are back. All right, so Henry, you shared with me that you're kind of trying to figure out a consistent system to keep track of your to-dos.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me, well, first, what do you currently do?
Well, the last strategy that I was employing was kind of a mix of, I don't know if you've heard of the My Homework app. It's been around for a little while. It's been around, I think, since I was at least a sophomore in high school. I've been using it on and off throughout high school, but recently during the pandemic, I found it was half of like the best strategy I'd come up with so far.
Okay.
It's essentially a digital assignment notebook.
Okay.
You sign in with like your Google account or your Facebook account or something like that. And it like you create classes and you create assignments for each class, and you can go so far as to like say when that class is, like what time and what days of the week that class is. And you can set due dates for the assignments for that class. You can set like a priority level. You can add like notes or you can attach files or whatever. So over the course of the pandemic, I was kind of trying to adjust on the fly. And that was one of the things that I rediscovered because I hadn't been using it for a while. So the My Homework app was half of the best strategy I had found so far. The other half of the best strategy I had found so far was my dad helped me mount a big whiteboard on the wall next to my desk.
Nice.
And I found that like at the beginning of, because DePaul's on the quarter system, at the beginning of the quarter, I would log every assignment on all of my syllabi into the My Homework app, right? The trouble with that was when I went to like the priority view where it shows you what's sorted by what's due the soonest / late, to what's due the furthest from now. I found that I was seeing everything that my computer screen could fit on the screen, all the assignments that
There's a lot.
And I really didn't need to know much more than what is the assignment I need to be working on right now for each of my 4 classes. Right. And so I got a bit overwhelmed by looking at that view. And so I would just go to that view and I would say, all right, what's the most important assignment? What's the most urgent assignment for each of my classes? And I'm going to write each one of those on my whiteboard.
How are you evaluating what's most important and what's most urgent?
That's kind of where I don't really have a concrete system for it. If I have nothing late, it's just what's due the soonest, right?
Okay.
But when I have stuff late, which is relatively frequently, more than I'd like to admit, that's where it gets complicated. Because it's like, well, what is this professor's late policy? They're not going to dock you any points at all ever as long as you hand it in before the end of the quarter. All right, push that to the wayside. Is it you have a week to get 90% credit for that? I'm going to keep that high on the priority list, you know?
But do you look at what your sort of current grade is in that class and how much a particular assignment is worth?
That's actually something I try to avoid. That was something that I thought would be helpful at first, is looking at the overall grade for my class right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple of problems with that. One is big picture is hard for me. I have a hard time motivating towards the big picture.
Okay.
In fact, it can make it harder for me to do stuff right now if I'm only thinking of the bigger picture. It can like make me like, oh God, I have to do perfect. Yeah, right. I have to do perfect on this assignment and every assignment after that if I want to get this grade, you know. It gets me overthinking. So I actually try to avoid looking at the overarching course grade. The other issue with that is, by no fault of the professor, I'm sure they have very busy lives. It's not always up to date with the most recent assignments, you know? And so then I go down the rabbit hole. If that's the case, I go down the rabbit hole of calculating the grades myself and estimating the grades myself. And that's a whole 3-hour thing on Excel spreadsheets. And believe me, I can go deeper than I need to with that, you know?
All right. So so currently this homework app with along with a whiteboard.
Yeah.
But you said that one of the things that you're struggling with is having a consistent system.
Yeah.
What have you used previously?
Well, I remember they used to give out, like, the school would give out assignment notebooks.
I hated those things. I thought that the design was not. Did it work for you?
It depends. Literally, it depends on the day. So they would give out assignment notebooks, but I was never using it because at the moment when the teacher was saying, like, here's what the assignment is, it didn't occur to me to pull it out of my bag and write the assignment down.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so in 5th grade, the social worker came up with like she made her own assignment notebook for me on like Word with a table, and I would use that.
Okay.
But in 5th grade, it was easier because the teacher knew that I had that special assignment notebook, and the social worker said you need to prompt him when you say what the assignment is so that he pulls out his assignment notebook and writes it down. Even then, sometimes I wasn't writing it down. And over the years, I tried to do a bunch of different things, like writing it on the notes app on my phone, just writing it on like one like master Post-it note so I couldn't overwrite and I wouldn't get overwhelmed, you know? Some things worked, some things didn't. And what was most frustrating is I found that what worked never lasted, you know?
What if I told you that the problem is not that it's not going to last, or that because this is part of ADHD, right? We need something to keep track of, like sort of time sensitive appointments. So we need a calendar.
Yeah, and Google Calendar is the only thing that's lasted for me.
Okay, and we need something to keep track of all the other shit we got to do.
Yeah. Right?
Where those things exist and the tools that we use for them, what if we can sort of shift the mindset from, I want to find a consistent tool to being quick to pivot when we realize we're no longer paying attention to this tool. Because it sounds like you have a couple tools in your toolbox that you have used in the past that have worked for you for a period of time, right? Because I think with the calendar is a harder tool to sort of toggle between different kinds of calendars,
right?
But like your to-do list app, you know, it's like, I mean, sometimes my to-dos for the day are literally just on a sticky note in front of me.
Right.
Sometimes it's on the whiteboard. Sometimes it's in Asana, right? Sometimes it's on my reminders app.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so one of the things that I found to be helpful is just recognize that, like, the function of novelty, right? And it's like, I'm not like switching apps because the app's not working. I'm switching apps because my brain, it just doesn't want to pay attention to
what's
this anymore.
new will work the best.
Exactly.
Huh.
And so it's like which is great if you're curious about how different apps work, because as you try different ones, try to use them for as long as you can, and sort of try to pay attention to, all right. And like one of the things that I would try to do is when I'm trying a new tool, is I would put in my calendar a question a couple weeks out.
Yeah.
That basically asks me, am I using this tool?
Huh.
All right. And if I am, I will then reset that question to come up again in a couple weeks.
That's so smart. See, I think that's the piece that I've been missing, because I've been like, towards the beginning of the pandemic, I was like really stuck on this one whiteboard system that was really overcomplicated and was like more trouble than it was worth. Right. And so I stopped using it. And like, at that point, I feel like having a reminder or like some all day calendar event set for like a week or two out to say, hey, remember, you don't have to stick to this system. You made it up and you could change it, would have been like the magic bullet for me, I guess.
Well, and one of the concepts that I teach in my coaching groups is, first of all, you don't need to use pen for anything. If you do, make sure it's erasable. Our calendars and our to-do lists, right? Like, it's there so it's easier to move shit around when you need to, right? Because like trying to manipulate information in your mind requires a good working memory.
Yeah, right.
We can just acknowledge that we don't have good working memories. Right. So if we have to move shit around, we use the tools to move shit around instead of like, all right, so I'm not going to do this thing today. The next time I can do this is in 3 days from now. So I move it to the calendar.
Yeah.
Then, the other thing is too, is when you're adding information to whatever tool you're using, what kind of information are you adding to it? Is it like a quick, just like word or two that cues you, or are you adding more detailed information?
Often I find I have an issue of communication. So if someone says something to me, I will say back, like whether it's to myself, writing it down, or if I'm saying it to someone else or texting it to someone else, I find I will say what I think the gist of it is. And sometimes again, more times than I'm willing to admit, sometimes I will accidentally leave out a crucial key detail, right? So what I like to do is like, if I can like shorthand certain words, like with is like W/.
Sure.
But other than that, keeping it almost verbatim, the language that it was given to me in is the best way to do it so that I don't end up putting myself in a bad position because I didn't write something down because I wrote it in my own way, right? Or I didn't make life harder for someone else because I accidentally omitted a key detail, you know?
There's a great Michael Scott meme that says, I knew exactly what I needed to do until I realized I had no idea what I needed to do.
I love that, yeah.
Right? And and I think that when we look at our to-dos and like, I know exactly what that means because I wrote it.
Yeah, right.
And it's not really registering that we actually have no idea what that item means because we just didn't give ourselves enough information. So I think, the words and the language that we use is a really critical, I think sometimes like overlooked part to our to-dos, especially if it's like a novel to-do, like something that's not like a routine type of like.
Oh, those are the worst.
Like for me, for my to-dos, like
they're fun, but they're the worst to keep track of.
Right. So like I could shorthand something. If it's an item that I have to do every week, I can shorthand that because I know what's involved with that.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's more a part of a project or, like I'm working on a job post ad right now, it's like, I can't just have like, job post ad, like.
Oh, those are the worst.
Right. So it's really looking at like, do I really, really know what that first action step is to start?
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes
that's another thing. Yeah. My parents would tell me in high school, like, go do your homework. Right. And I mean, at the time they didn't know any better. Right. And neither did I actually. They would say, go do your homework. And I'm like, okay, I'll go do my homework. And I sit down and looking back, I felt like go do your homework is the least helpful thing you could tell me to do because go do your homework could mean a million different things and it doesn't tell me how to do it either.
Right.
You know?
It's like, go clean your room. It's like, okay, where do I start?
That has been a struggle the whole pandemic and even before. Go clean your room is the worst.
It still sucks.
Yeah.
It's fortunately I'm now at a point in my life where I've hired a cleaning person to come every other week and I'm just like, oh God, thank God. Cause it's just like,
there you go.
That's funny. I love being in a clean space. And for how much I love it, you would think that I would, be a clean person.
Same.
But I'm not. Like the house will be clean. And then like within 24 hours, I'm like, why is there shit everywhere all over?
Yeah.
Like,
My dad will be like, I know you like having a clean room and we just took all the dirty laundry off your floor. So why are you putting dirty laundry back on your floor? I'm like, I don't know. Like,
and that's the honest answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. When it comes to the system, like we need something to keep track of the to-dos. We need to then check in the to-dos.
Yeah.
Do you capture and then not review? So do you capture your to-dos and then not?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That has been the bane of my existence. Like ever since I invited my parents into this, like learning about ADHD, like I watched this 3-hour presentation with my parents and my mom was always very accommodating. She was always like, all right, let's switch. Let's see what can we do to help you the best. Right. And I don't fault him for this, but my dad was more like, this is what works for me. I'm going to teach you this, But my dad has gotten really good recently about saying, I need you to write this down, especially after I made it a big point. Like, if it's not written down, I'm likely going to forget about it when I walk away,
I want to encourage you to do something. So it sounds like you have really supportive parents.
Yes.
I want to encourage you to help your parents to stop telling you what you should be doing and start asking you questions to help you think through what you need to do.
Okay.
Right. There's a book that I would encourage you to read, maybe have your parents read,
Change Your
called
Questions,
Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. Because, often we're trying to figure out the solution. What we want to do is start with trying to figure out the question. Because if we're not asking ourselves the right questions, we're not going to be solving the right problems.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds so simple when you say it, but like, I never would have thought of that myself, I guess.
Right. And I think what happens is we get stuck. And if we can sort of pull back and instead of just brainstorming solutions, let's start brainstorming questions. Like, am I thinking about this in the right way?
Yeah. All right.
Right.
All right.
So I'll let you write that down when we're done here.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So setting up maybe a recurring event on your calendar that asks you the question, am I still using the tool? Am I still paying attention to the tool? We also want to think about our cues. Like what's going to be the cue to check back into the to-do list, to look at our calendar. I use the analogy often because it's so common for people with ADHD. They'll write their to-do list and then they don't look at it again for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And to me, it's the equivalent of setting your GPS app when you go somewhere, but throwing your GPS in the trunk before you leave.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, that's not helpful.
Right.
Right. So thinking about how to what's going to be the easiest and way for me and how that is going to be different for everybody,
Yeah.
right? So it's always about experimenting
Yeah.
and iteration.
Yeah.
But what's going to be the easiest way for you to be cued? Hey, check back in on each of these. Hey, check back in. Because you mentioned something earlier that was really spot on. It was about, I just need to know what I need to do today, right? And it really you have all of your hundreds of tasks that you have to do for school, right? And it can be overwhelming if you look at all of it.
Right.
The thing that I think is most important to be cognizant of is, what are you doing now? What are you doing next? Everything else is a distraction, right? Knowing what's next makes transitions easier. It also makes you cognizant that, there is a next thing, and I can't spend the entire day and night working on this one thing, because I actually do have other things that I need to do.
See, I'm so glad that this is a podcast and not just like a private recording that I'm never going to hear again, because I could come back to this episode and be like, oh, that's what he said. I'm going to try that again,
And I share with my groups too. It's like, I'm teaching this stuff, but I'm not doing any of this perfectly, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we just keep experimenting, keep getting back up. And that really is the name of the game, is keep getting back up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have to sort of, if we think about the one constant in ADHD is that it's inconsistent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's probably not going to change. What can change is how much time we allow ourselves to stay down.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we don't need to beat the shit out of ourselves when we're down. Recognize it, and start back at square one if you need to. Right? Like, you can be going, if you're doing really well with planning for a while, and then you fall off for a little bit. Right? Just because you had this really good streak and you were kind of the scope of your planning was expanding, doesn't mean that's where you're going to pick it back up. You got to kind of start back at square one again. It's like a marathon runner.
Yeah, right.
Right? It's like, great, you ran a marathon before, but you've been on the couch for the last 2 years. You want to run a marathon again. Yeah. You're not going to start by running a marathon. You're going to start by running on the block.
Yeah.
Right?
Get your body used to it.
Exactly.
Work up to it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's, you always got to meet yourself where you're at. And I think too, it sounds like you're probably doing more right than you realize.
I also get that a lot too. Yeah.
So if you can take one or two things away from this for your systems, what would you want to try?
I think, well, definitely I'm going to implement the reminder or the calendar event or whatever it is that cues me to say, hey, check in with how your system is working. I'm definitely going to implement that. But I think what would probably also help is if I kept like an encyclopedia, and it wouldn't be nearly that big because I don't have that many strategies, but like an encyclopedia of like strategies of what I've done in the past, an
owner's manual.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Of like, all right, you've used a planner in the past. You've used the school given assignment notebook. You've used the My Homework app. You've used a whiteboard. You've used X, Y, and Z. So spin the wheel. What are we doing next?
I love that. And you mentioned spin the wheel. If you can gamify any of this stuff.
There you go.
All right. Like give point values to whether it's how many days you've actually checked it on your calendar, or point values to pivoting quickly when you realize that a tool, you're just not paying attention to it anymore.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, it is, as someone who loved technology and sort of thought that the iPhone, when Siri came on board, was going to be this is going to be the best thing to happen since Ritalin to ADHD.
Yeah,
right. And then it's I can add these to-dos so easily just with a voice command. And but I have 150 to-dos on my reminders app. And I'm the reminders app isn't good. So let me find yet another one.
Yeah.
And then I do that, and then I then rinse and repeat for 30 more apps.
Right,
and then at some point you realize, maybe it's not the app.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Maybe it's just me,
Right. And so it's what? I got all these great tools. The shelf life on them that holds my attention might be short, but that's all right. Just rotate them through.
Yeah.
All right, Henry, thank you so much for coming here and sharing what your journey has been. You have a website. What's on the website here?
This is kind of the thing that I give out to people where I apply to work, or if I'm talking about it, this is the perfect thing that I give out is this is what I do. This is what I'm interested in. This is my work. It's a link tree that will send you to a couple of different pages. One of them is there's this website called itch.io where people can post online where the games that they've made, or they've recently expanded, not recently, but they've expanded to music and art and all sorts of stuff. It's a independent creators website where you can post your work on there. I play this game Beat Saber. It's a VR music game.
Oh, cool. Are you a musician?
Not a musician, but I'm very much interested in music. Yeah.
Okay.
It's essentially like Fruit Ninja meets Guitar Hero in VR. And I've made a couple of levels for Beat Saber, like for level design for when I'm applying to game companies and stuff. And there's one more link on there. I think it's my GitHub page where like I host my code.
Okay. So it's this linktree.e. What we're going to do, we're going to post a link to this on the show notes page because it's not the best link for audio.
Right. Yeah, if you go to the link, it's really simple. It'll just show a bunch of green buttons of like all the places you can go. It's super simple.
All right. Henry Holman, thank you so much for sharing this and for really helping us see what really using your passion can teach you about yourself. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADDA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tibbers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.